picture when it was on fire. And I just assumed I was just going to see a crumbled mess. But,
You saw a structure.
yeah. I was surprised. Because, I mean, the picture, I don't know where. Maybe it was from 15th Street or something that appeared.
There's Jessica.
Like it,
Very timely.
you know.
Yeah. Look back.
Okay, we're live streaming, and I believe we've got a quorum now. So, Maeve, if you want to get started, maybe just acknowledge who all is here. I'm just put the participant list here at the council chambers so we can see.
All right. Well, welcome to this June 28th, 2022 meeting of the Philomath Inclusivity Committee. In attendance are myself, Rose Bricker, Zena Allen, Jessica Andrade, Chris Workman, Van Hunsaker, and Chaz Jones. First order of business is approval of last meeting's minutes. Do we have consensus to approve?
Yes. Thumbs up here. Van's nodding yes.
All right, I'm a yes. Rose is a yes.
2 abstentions. If we can.
And that should carry it. So meeting minutes approved. First real order of business is we have a review of Philomath Pride. Rose, I think you were going to take care of that.
Sure. So on June 4th, we held what, to my knowledge, is Philomath's first ever and hopefully first annual Pride event. I didn't get an official head count, but I think at our peak, we had between 60 and 70 people. I spearheaded the efforts, but I definitely did not do it all by myself. I had a bunch of help from the community. I am struggling to find my notes so I can officially thank people. Give me one sec. So Philomath Community Services, Mid-Willamette Valley Trans Support Network, the Commuter, which is the LBCC newspaper, let's see, Jackson Street Youth Shelter, Cardva, the OSU Pride Center, City of Philomath, and a bunch of other folks either attended the event and helped with it, contributed to our community table that we had, or financially helped by taking something off of our wish list or Amazon wish list. I, of course, have a long list of things that I want to change and expand for next year, but I'm excited to kind of get planning, and hopefully with the Inclusivity Committee and with the city, we can kind of grow from here. Feedback that I received during the event was, this is amazing. We've been waiting for something like this. Definitely similar to the feedback that we had received in the April's meeting in Gianna's letter, was that there's not a lot of community as far as for queer folks. And so I think everyone was just really excited to kind of have the opportunity to gather, to make connections. And so I'm excited to see how it grows. But I felt the event went awesome. True Oregonians didn't care about the drizzles and the rain. We just threw on our rain jackets and had a good time.
Nice.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Rose. And I will vouch and say that it was a super fun event. I was glad to have made it.
Thanks for taking the lead on that, Rose. Really appreciate it, and wish I could have been there, but I was out of town.
I think that is one thing that I could add. I was very happy with the turnout, even though we were just kind of leaning on word of mouth and queer-friendly social media avenues. So I think we had safety in mind, being trauma informed, because that was a feedback from some people as I was getting started with planning. And so I think if for next year and the years in the future, involvement with the city, involvement with the Inclusivity Committee will only kind of beef up that safety feeling. And we can't guarantee a safe space, but we can try and make it as safe and trauma informed as possible. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Rose. And thank you and everyone who had a hand in putting that on. Next up, I want to take a second and sort of acknowledge what I believe to be a miss from this committee, and that is in regards to Juneteenth. We had very little discussion in this committee about Juneteenth, and not just about what Juneteenth is and what it means, but also what it means to all of us on a personal level. And of course, we did no event or anything in that regard. And I would like to see this committee strive to do better for next year and for all opportunities upcoming as we are able, to better acknowledge these really critical events. And so I would like this committee, and people can weigh in on this if they like, but I would like to see this committee dedicate some intentional time to talking about what we can do for Juneteenth next year, but in the framework of what that means for all of us on a personal level, because it's one thing to just sort of put on an event for an event's sake. But that feels really performative. And I think time spent connecting to what Juneteenth means to all of us personally, especially those of us who are not Black, I think is very important and will help inform what kind of event we can put on in the future and how we can acknowledge. It doesn't even feel right to call it a holiday because it's so much more than that, but to acknowledge this in the future in a way that serves the community better.
Thank you for that, Maeve. I've been struggling with this for a couple of months actually. Ever since February, when the folks on this committee didn't seem like they pretty much straight out told us that they weren't interested in doing proclamations. And I understand the reasoning for that. However, I will clearly state how embarrassed I am from my perspective that we didn't do a Pride or Juneteenth proclamation. Other communities around me are doing it. The mayors are doing it. But yet I didn't feel like I had the support of the Inclusivity Committee on that, so I didn't even bring it forward because on Black History Month, I got pushback and also very directly heard that we don't want to do proclamations because it seems performative. And I get that, but from my perspective, it's just not something, I don't feel good about it at all. Whether or not it feels performative, to me, it feels pretty significant. And, talking with my Black friends, my non-gender binary friends, or coworkers, I don't know, they ask me, oh, what are you doing? And I'm doing things, but the Inclusivity Committee kind of told me not to do something. So anyway, it's something I'm struggling with. I still struggle with it. I just wanted to just mention that just so that we can think about that moving forward in case we might want to change that stance. But it's something I struggle with. So anyway, I'll just leave it at that.
Jessica?
Sorry, I was working, finishing up some wet lab stuff. So Anyway, I love everything you said, Maeve, wholeheartedly. Mayor Jones, I don't believe that the committee outright said, no, we won't be doing this. I know I specifically said that I am not in favor of doing a bunch of proclamations that takes away from, you know, actually physically doing the work that is, you know, something that is not performative, which proclamations can be if there's no action attached to it. But I think it's unfair of you to blame this on the committee when the committee never actually had a full conversation on that. It was just a, hey, we hate how, okay, sorry, not we hate. We're, from what I understood, I don't think it was just me and saying that we were frustrated that council just kept giving us proclamation after proclamation after proclamation within such a short amount of time, a short turnaround. That's not fair to us. That's not fair to the council. That's not fair to the community who deserve something. We deserve more time to be able to do a good job on these proclamations. I think that if you had wanted that, then you should have brought it to us and asked. Don't assume anything. That's number one. With regards to social justice, definitely ask. Well, actually, I don't know if it's number one per se, but anyway, yes, I personally did not bring up doing those proclamations because we had such a short amount of time to, you know, do a good job on those. And like, as already stated, like, we had like Rose through this awesome event celebrating Pride, and it would have been awesome if we could have done that, but we just didn't have the time. And not to mention having city council breathing down our backs, like telling us that we haven't come up with our objectives and goals. And even though we've been working on this for a long time, even though council has been giving us task after task after task. So please do not assume anything and just ask. And I am trying not to speak for everyone, and I hope that if I misconstrued what I saw with regards to how people felt about these proclamations, please correct me. I deeply apologize. But yes, back to you, Maeve. I full-heartedly agree. We do need to come up with a way to meaningfully celebrate these two events. Thank you.
Zena?
I think I understand what you're saying, and I also find it kind of saddening because there was like no moment when you actually reached out to me or that you tried to connect, as far as I know, like with more people in our community about it. And so I feel like, yeah, committees should be able to give you advice, but at the end of the day, you are the mayor of Philomath, and you can take, you just need to make more intentional maybe moves, and like having a proclamation that is tone deaf and is more performative. That I think it doesn't do anything really. But I think if you had said, yeah, I'm coming from my perspective of this, and also, as a leader in our community, but I mean, you literally ran into me the other day. We can talk, you can ask. I'm here for that. And so, yeah.
Thank you.
I see Van.
Yeah, I guess a couple of thoughts on what's been said. I was at that meeting when the discussion about although it might have been not like on the agenda discussion about the proclamations, I think everybody needs to remember that everybody comes to the table with different feelings and thoughts and about what's, you know, best or the most or appropriate thing to do. I guess if I kind of in defense of the mayor, I would say I probably would have I probably would have done what he did, nothing. And but on the other hand, I can see where, I mean, your point of, well, maybe ask individuals directly or whatever. I mean, maybe he could have done that more perfectly, or if you will. But it did seem to me that it was viewed very much as a negative to have proclamations. So that point, and the other point being, as I said, everybody's coming to this from a different angle within their own lives, and whether you're black or gay or whatever, you know, your perspective is going to be probably somehow different than mine on any given situation, just because we're living a different life from one another. So I think we need to all be okay with maybe not getting it the first time around as far as what somebody's saying or not doing or doing. This thing about performative, and I'm not quite clear on what that means, but I guess when I was mayor, and I frankly didn't do any of these things. Things have changed in the last 20 years, so I apologize for that. But that, as the mayor has said, that well, he really would have wanted to do it. I don't know that it would have been necessary for him to have, you know, send you the proclamation that he would have written. It's, in a sense, it's coming from him. It's not necessarily coming from the Inclusivity Committee. So whatever he may write is coming from his heart, not necessarily from everybody in the committee. And I think even given that or understanding it in that vein, you would want to, you know, if you will, give him credit for whatever he may put in a proclamation that is about a given subject. I guess that's about it.
Anyway, I just wanted to broach the topic. You know, I don't know if we want to. If the answer is that we don't have a blanket policy that we do not want to do proclamations, then that is very helpful to know, and I can know that moving forward. But anyway, I'm not asking for us to make a decision or anything, but it's just helpful for me to know that people are open to that or not. In the past, I've been trying to not do mayoral proclamations, do things more from a council or from the Inclusivity Committee as a whole, just because I don't like the idea of one person moving things forward as much. But it is helpful to get that feedback from all of you, that you're open to the idea of, you know, and I don't mind working with others to do these. I just wanted some feedback that yes, we can do these things, that we don't have to identify them as being performative and just a time suck. I see that Zena and Chris both have their hands up.
Zena, did you want to go ahead?
I do. I think that when I think of performative, I think of, again, these kind of blanket statements that you can put on things. But when I ask for people to, you know, you're going to do a proclamation or a justice statement, again, to really focus it through your own lens of your life and where you want things to go. And so I feel like by no means was I like, don't make a proclamation. I just feel like if you are going to do that, you know, and I think you should be able to take the lead on so much of this. I mean, you are mayor. Just again, put it through the frame of I'm coming from my experience. This isn't just something that I've cut and pasted, you know. This is why we're making, you know, this is how I want to make progress. This is who I am. And so that's I think what I was asking for. And so I think it's unfortunate if there was some kind of misunderstanding around you just saying anything. I mean, I think sometimes you have to do something. You can't just wait for counsel, or if you are waiting, reach out to somebody. You know, I'm sure many people at the NAACP or wherever would have loved to have conversations with you. And so maybe moving forward, you know, that's maybe how you can more freedom around doing those kinds of things.
Yeah, thank you for that feedback. I appreciate it. I don't think they can see your hand, Chris.
Oh, yep, there it is. Hey, Chris.
It's all right. One of the things that comes to mind just to help maybe is there's been discussion about putting a calendar together. And I think putting a calendar together will help the committee to foresee things like Juneteenth coming up, that maybe, you know, 2 or 3 months before we get to the Juneteenth, we can start having the discussions about what do we want to do? What would a proclamation look like? Are there things in addition to or instead of a proclamation we want to do? And maybe being a little bit more intentional and less reactive. And maybe that would help things not feel like we're just throwing something together to say that we did it and check a box, which feels performative, like we're just doing it to say we checked a box and we did it. And we could be a little bit more intentional in what it is that we're doing. I think a calendar might help to do that, because even now I'm looking at, okay, we're in July here next week, yeah, already. You know, July, August, September, October. So looking forward, it's like, okay, what are we going to talk about in the next meeting? And then months from that, what are we talking about? We're going to have a review of the Inclusivity Proclamation again, first of the year. So are we going to start talking about that in January, or should we start talking about that in, say, November, right? So I think having that calendar that we've talked about will help a little bit. If we talk about the Pride event, that seems like something too that kind of snuck up on us and then we didn't have time for it. So I'm just seeing a little bit of a pattern of things that the committee's interested in doing, but then we don't have the time to plan for it. And then so it feels rushed and it feels like we're just doing it for maybe the wrong reasons instead of being more intentional. So my recommendation would be maybe at the next meeting that gets onto the agenda as a discussion to really put a calendar out there and take input and really start focusing on putting what could be, you know, some things are going to cycle through and be cyclical that you're going to do every year. You're going to revisit things and look at things. And then others may be things that this year we want to really focus on this topic, and these are the months we're going to do it. Just a suggestion might help the committee a little bit.
Jessica?
Yeah, I believe that was the plan, to try to get to that this meeting, but with all of the things to review and knowing that we would have some larger conversations like this, we kind of figured that should happen at the next meeting. I think there might also be some misconceptions about who is creating the initial draft of the proclamation. I know I am under the impression that that's supposed to come from the council or the mayor. I don't know what anyone else's impressions are, but I was under the impression that at our last meeting in particular, that with regards to policies and ordinances and you know, proclamations and such, that we're here to review and provide recommendations to the council based on the things that the council creates, and then maybe we create things too and propose it to council. I don't know if anyone wants to weigh in on their perceptions of this.
I'll actually just mention that any community group can come to myself or the city council with a proclamation, a draft proclamation for consideration, and there's actually a link on our website to submit them for consideration. And so, you know, from my perspective, anybody that put together a proclamation and said, hey, you want to consider this, that's super helpful, because I just don't have the time or the capacity to do this all the time. And so that's my take. Any help that I can get to move these kinds of things forward is super helpful. I can't take the lead on everything. There's just no way that I can possibly do it.
Rose?
So I'm going to keep my video off because it was glitching. But I'm thinking, since there has been some miscommunication about process and who does what and how that all works and potentially stepping on people's toes, I definitely kind of felt that when I was planning the Pride event, just trying to navigate it. I'm thinking, could that be another thing for the agenda is, and maybe this already exists, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but a process on if I want a proclamation made, or if I want to draft a proclamation to be brought to the Inclusivity Committee, or if I want to spearhead an event, something like that, and have that publicized in some way, either on the Inclusivity page within the Philomath page, the web page, but some way where it's clearly communicated, this is how it works, this is how you can do this. Knowledge is power, and I'm thinking that if it's clearly written and agreed upon with the existing Inclusivity Committee members, then we all are on the same page about what we can do and how to do it, so that there's not miscommunication, there's not, I didn't feel comfortable doing this, so I didn't do it kind of thing happening.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look at the page that the mayor is referring to, but I know that was one thing he initiated this last year, was to try to get a link on the city's website where anybody could make a proclamation. I still think the conversation's healthy here with this committee on how the Inclusivity Committee wants to approach, you know, inclusivity, diversity, and inclusion type proclamations. You know, do we identify those ahead of time and work on them throughout the year? Do we wait for the mayor or a city council member to bring it to the committee? Or, you know, is the committee going to be proactive or reactive? You know, do we want to wait till the council tells us to do something, or do we want to be more proactive and make recommendations to the council? I think that's the question before the committee still.
If I may, so yes, we are going to be creating that calendar. Again, the initial draft of a proclamation, getting back to that and who makes it, because as it is, I don't know how feasible it is for us to create one from scratch, considering how busy, I don't want to assume anything, but knowing how busy each and every one of us is already, creating a resolution, or I'm sorry, proclamation is a lot, as you well know, Mayor. So I guess one of the things we had spoken about before was revisiting proclamations that have been made already. And so do we have a past Pride proclamation? I'm under the impression we have a past Juneteenth proclamation. I could be wrong. And just starting from there, having a list of what, I know we have multiple Indigenous Peoples Day or month proclamations. Let's start from there, and we'll have somewhere to begin, I guess. if we could get a list of that, Chris, that would be great.
Okay.
Van?
I don't disagree with you, Jessica, but then I go back to, well, doesn't that, if we're using something somebody else did, are we putting our heart into that? Or isn't that kind of become performative by just using somebody else's proclamation? I don't know. It's more of a question.
So I would say that that's not, we wouldn't just be using it. It would be, let's look at this, what has been said, how much do we agree with this, how much do we not? Like, should we just scrap this entire thing? But who knows, there might be some gems in there that we want to keep.
Okay.
That was more or less what I meant.
Okay, good.
So I can provide you with what we have so far, and why don't I get that to you to get into the packet before the next meeting? Maybe that combined with the calendar project of putting the calendar together, those two should merge up pretty easily. And again, we can schedule a review of those proclamations at least a month, a couple months before. We're going to expect that it goes in front of the city council. So I think those two projects will merge well. And seems like a simple enough procedure to go through next month.
Can I just ask a quick question of Chris? Chris, on the calendar, the last 2 years ago, we created our first Inclusivity Proclamation, suggesting that we would re-certify that or push that through again every year. We were a little bit late last year. Was it still a 12-month timeline, or did we push it back to doing it at the first of each year?
Yeah, I have to go back. I'll look when I look these up. I kind of I don't remember. It seems like that was a January type thing, but we were a little bit late this year. Maybe
2 years ago, it was June 1st. It was
it
George
June?
Floyd. Or no, it was July, mid-July, because it was after George Floyd.
Okay, well,
I think it was more like August,
And then we pushed it back a little bit last year.
end of July, beginning of August.
that may be one we need to talk about as early as next month, right? If that's the time frame. So I'll look and I'll get that out.
Sorry, I meant from the initial adoption of the proclamation.
Yeah. Well, again, it'll be on the list that I provide, so I'll get that out. Then we can have that discussion next month. But again, maybe if it is that time frame, if it is that July or August timeframe, we need to get back to the council for them to re-evaluate it, then that would mean maybe that's an agenda item for next month as well. So Jessica, maybe I can look at that with you and we can add that in there. If we need to, we can add that to the agenda as a separate topic. And again, I don't think it's a rewrite. I think it's look at it, review it. Are there tweaks? Are there additional comments we can put in there that have more meaning? Are there some actions that we can take rather than just changing a word or two? Are there some actions we can take related to that proclamation? I think is what we're trying to get after in that review process each year.
Do we have any further questions or comments on this topic?
Nope, nothing, not for anyone here.
All right. Then I agree that we should come back to this in an unintentional way. And I do agree that getting that calendar rolling will be a helpful part in that process. And I don't want us to get stuck in a loop of this is an important conversation. We need to dedicate time to it. Let's push it till next month. So next order of business, final review of committee goals and objectives. And I think Jessica's going to lead this one.
So last time we discussed what we wanted to include in our recommendations to council of what our goals and objectives would be. And I tried to incorporate everything in that I could remember and gather together from whatever notes I could find. I had some issues with Microsoft Office disappearing from my laptop for a while, so I couldn't quite get everything. So I hope everyone was able to take a look at this and bring thoughts about like anything that I missed, or if I might have, mistyped something. I know I sent around a copy of Christopher's email this last night with his thoughts about both this and the one of the later agenda items. So does anyone have any, we're not trying to spend too much time on this, just, if we want to add more, I'm under the impression the idea was to add as time goes on, like, oh, hey, 2 months down the line, you know what we should do? We should do this. Let's recommend it to council to add to our list of goals and objectives, and just kind of go from there with this as a living document. So the main focus is just trying to make sure that it all reads the way that we want it to at the moment.
I see you, Chaz.
I just have the one thing that triggers my my concern is reference to all city documents every 3 to 5 years. All city documents. I have no idea how many city documents we have, but it seems like it's probably pretty big.
I can understand why that would be confusing. I meant all to refer to whatever city documents, policies, the charter, municipal code, ordinances, whatever gets on that list. Do you have a suggestion as to how to rephrase that and or the previous thing that it falls under? Should it be complete a comprehensive review of all city documents on the schedule every 3 to 5 years?
Just looking at it, in the number 1 above, you reference policy, city documents which include policies, charter, municipal code, and ordinances. And again, Chris, I don't have any real idea about how many documents that is, but it seems like it's basically all state law.
It's a lot, yeah.
I'm wondering, maybe not in this document, but I'm wondering if we should prioritize certain things. Maybe the comprehensive plan, start with that. Maybe review the comprehensive plan and the strategic plan. I don't know. I'm just wondering. I know that it'd be good to do all these things. I just don't think that it's a realistic for us to. I don't think it's a realistic goal right away. But Chris, I welcome your thoughts.
I actually saw Rose first, then Chris.
Oh, sure. Sorry.
I had a suggestion, but I think I want to hear what Chris has to say as a follow-up to Shaz first.
I'm just wondering, is the intent here that the Inclusivity Committee as a body is going to review these, or is it that the Inclusivity Committee is going to oversee the review of this? Are we going to contract with somebody to do a review of this, or we bring a consultant in? Because I have my own experiences, my own expertise, but it's not specifically looking at legal, quasi-legal, or planning type documents through this kind of lens. It's not an expertise that I pretend to have. I have my own biases and my own lenses that I see the world through. I'm just wondering, just what I said, I guess, is the intent that we're going to take out the comprehensive plan, which is 14 chapters, 13 chapters, and we're going to sit down as an inclusivity committee and we're going to go through that entire document and discuss chapter by, page by page, chapter by chapter. I'm just wondering what that looks like, because that could be a 3-year project in and of itself, as opposed to if we're going to contract somebody to come in and review that and report, and then we'll make recommendations on changes that could be made based on that report. That seems a little more doable and practical. And again, that's just talking about the comprehensive plan. That's not looking at the municipal code and all these other things. I think Chaz's concern and the mayor's concern is worth discussing. I mean, if we're talking about that substantial amount of work every 3 to 5 years, that seems just not possible, depending on the depth or the level of review that we're going to give these documents.
Can I jump
Rose?
in, Maeve?
Yep.
So I'm thinking, I know that there is DEI consultants that could potentially provide a guide, and so Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, because you have a wealth of knowledge that I don't. But there is like an annual review of city policies and ordinance. Like there is a time as these things are developed that they are reviewed. So my suggestion would be, instead of going back, it would be the intention to, as going forward, potentially with the input of an expert, a DEI consultant who could provide the city and the Inclusivity Committee some sort of framework on how to look through an equitable lens, and identify our internalized biases, that using that guide going forward, not only the Inclusivity Committee, but I think the City Council could also use that as a guide when developing policies, code, ordinances, to kind of use that as a guide, basically. Does that make sense? Sorry.
Makes sense to me.
It does, if I can respond. It makes sense. I have the same concerns though. So let me give another example. So the city's updating our housing policy within the comprehensive plan. So just chapter 3 on housing. The planning commission has spent 4 meetings,
Something like
at least,
or more.
4 meetings of 2 to 3 hours each, looking at these policies. I've probably got 20 hours into that project myself. The city council just held a public hearing and had discussions about it on Monday. So that's one chapter of one document, the comprehensive plan. It doesn't seem inappropriate that the Inclusivity Committee would look at those chapters, look at those policies that are being proposed, provide some input. I'm just not sure where that takes place. Does it happen before it goes to the Planning Commission? After it comes from the Planning Commission to the City Council? After the City Council's looked at it and is looking to consider to approve it? After it's been approved by the City Council, then the Inclusivity, see what I'm saying? That's just one chapter. I'm just not sure where it makes sense for the Inclusivity Committee to be looking at and evaluating and reviewing those new policies. I mean, those are the housing policies for the city of Philomath. There's, I don't know, 4 different goals, and each one's got 3 to 10 policies under each of those, and it just seems like a monstrous task, I guess is what I'm saying, for an Inclusivity Committee to take, especially when we're looking at all the other things that we're hoping the Inclusivity Committee is going to be able to do. I'd hate for the committee to get bogged down in literally just what would end up being reviewing hours of documents every month in order to kind of meet this standard. So I don't want to overcomplicate it, but I do think that there's a lot more here than just, we're going to read it, we're going to make a few notes, and we're going to double check. I think it's going to be a lot heavier task than that.
Rose?
So I think when I'm kind of considering what I had suggested about having a DEI consultant or expert provide some sort of guide, it would be not on the onus of the Inclusivity Committee to review everything that all of the other city committees are developing. It would be the onus of the Inclusivity Committee to develop the guide with input from potentially a DEI consultant. And then, because, I mean, what I would like to see from the Inclusivity Committee is creating framework that can be used within the City Council, within the Planning Committee, within all of the other groups and committees within the city, so that while these policies, while these ordinances are being developed, it's in their mind of what are we missing? Who's not at the table? What considerations have we not made? So instead of having a bunch of work for the Inclusivity Committee when we have a lot of objectives, I think my suggestion would be to develop something that can be used across the board with all committees, with the city council.
I see Zena, then Chris.
I was under the probably wrong assumption that we would also be seeking help from like the COG. You know, Gabe came and we had wonderful people like Johan and such come to our committee meetings. And so I kind of had this thought that we would be working with other cities and other, you know, people to, you know, help us maybe be more equitable and efficient. And I think that we maybe didn't ever get back to the COG or Gabe on some of this stuff. But I mean, I feel like it was an offer on the table and we just need to kind of decide whether, I guess, you as a city council want to accept that kind of, you know, help or I mean, if we are just doing this alone as the city of Philomath, that is a lot of work. If we are just looking at these people on this committee, it's a ton of work. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Chris, then Jessica.
I was just gonna ask if I could give an update, but
Okay, go ahead, Chris.
Okay, just kidding.
Rose, I really appreciate your insight there, and I think what you're talking about is a lot different than what A1B currently reads, because what I hear you saying is more like complete a process or provide a process to ensure that city documents are reviewed, you know, on a regular basis for, you know, DEI subject matter type thing. So that to me seems much more doable. It's still going to take some work to get that process figured out. I think to Zena's point, that process could include reaching out to other sources outside of the city to help review some of those documents. It wouldn't put all the onus on the committee to review the process, but I think it would be very doable for the Inclusivity Committee to create a process to ensure that city documents are reviewed under the DEI lens. And that could be when they're established, it could be on a semi-regular basis. I think that could be open-ended. That just seems a lot more doable to me.
I think doable, and not only, I mean, it's sharing the load. It's not just on the Inclusivity Committee to be the approvers of everything that the city's doing. And it kind of encourages other people and other committees that may not be involved in Inclusivity Committee or may be new to social justice work to have that opportunity for growth and learning.
Go ahead, Chris.
And I have seen, since the Inclusivity Committee has been formed, I've seen in public meetings when we were talking about policy, topics of diversity and equity and inclusion naturally taking place in the conversations about policies more often than what I used to. All right, and so I do think that that's, in part due to the Inclusivity Committee just being formed. I think the council's more mindful. I think part of it is, we've changed in how we look at things and how we look at policies, and it's not so much about cost benefit analysis, which, was one very typical way for policies to kind of be written. But now you're also seeing more of a social justice lens brought into those discussions. I think that the policymakers, be it planning commissioners, city council members, I think they want to look at things and be more inclusive in the way they're looking at it. So some guidance and some templates and some help on how, how to assure that that's being taken place, I think it'd be welcomed by the city council and the planning commission.
Jessica, did you still have your item?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the thing with the cog, have not heard back about anything. Apparently, when I last spoke with Gabe about this, he had said that there was some sort of holdup. Not quite sure what or when we will hear from them. And then with regards to Johan, I believe all we got to do is just reach out to them with, to ask for their help with something, or if they have resources that we could use. So just a quick. Oh, and sorry, also, yeah, I really love what you said, Rose, about creating that framework. All I know is that the intent at the last meeting was precisely to look through the schedule of documents. I know Councilor Nielsen and Christopher had brought this up as something to add. But if we're feeling that this should be more of a framework, let me know what I should replace that language with, committee members, please.
Chris?
So I've just been scribbling notes. So as an example, here's something I might recommend for A1B. I have create a process to ensure city documents are reviewed through a DEI lens prior to adoption or renewal.
Could it be developed and reviewed? So instead of after the document's already created, like as it's being developed, that's at the forefront as well.
Yeah, I think that would be good.
Can you repeat that one more time, please?
Create a process to ensure city documents are developed and reviewed through a DEI lens prior to adoption or renewal. Although I wouldn't say DEI, I would say diversity, equity, inclusive lens prior to adoption.
Thank you.
Rose?
My partner just reminded me that, or educated me that now a term that's being used is DEIA, and the A standing for accessibility, which I feel is different than inclusive.
Thank you. I had not heard that either. I appreciate that. Chaz, is your hand up or are you just resting comfortably?
I'm just thinking.
Okay. Classic thinker pose.
I'll wave higher when I have a question.
Okay. Jessica?
So then is that the only thing that we will have under A, and then strike the lowercase a and b from that? Does that sound about right to everyone?
I think A is okay still.
The lowercase a?
Yeah.
I wasn't sure because it isn't that dependent on city council?
When the things are being reviewed.
I would include with that the proclamations that we just talked about in the prior discussion. I think proclamations would be included there, city documents. I think, again, that's to be determined what those documents are. I don't know that I would just take the list up above, including everything, but I think if you're building out your calendar for the year, you could say, it's been a while since we looked at this document. Let's take a look at that next month or 2 months from now.
Okay, to clarify, the thing that you had, the language you had suggested was to replace number 1 of capital letter A, correct?
No, A1 letter B, lowercase b.
Oh, sorry, I missed that. I thought it was A1. Okay, A1B, got it.
A1 lowercase b. So A1 lowercase a would stay the same, and then
Okay.
what I proposed would replace A1 lowercase b.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
So we do away with all city documents every 3 to 5 years. That was the problematic language.
I like that.
To clarify one more time, strike number 1. Is that what you just said, to do away with all of that?
No, strike A1B and replace it with the language that I suggested.
Yes. Okay, I thought you said something else just then.
So you leave A, leave 1, leave A1A, and then put the new A1B in.
All right, any other comments, edits?
Councilor Dry, did you want to speak to some of Christopher's comments about Confederate Tribes of Siletz Indians in the school district and that relationship, or
Sure.
questions about there? And
Yeah, so he had the original thing, email that he sent, he had thought that the intent was to potentially influence or interfere with the relationship that the schools have with the tribes. But since I had put this document together, I stated my intent, and I don't know how clear this was to everyone at the time or now, was simply to gather information about the treaties between the tribes and Philomath, the city, the schools, whoever they may have treaties with within Philomath, so that we just have a better knowledge of our history, and hopefully we can learn from those and maybe come up with ideas of things like, maybe we want to suggest to the schools that we would like to partner with them on something with the tribes, or, just, it was purely informational, and maybe something would come of it after the fact with the appropriate, sign-offs from everyone. So I guess, does that kind of answer any questions that anyone may have had about that?
I see Chaz really quick though. I see Van too. Just a point of clarity. I don't think that there are or will ever be any treaties between the tribes and the city of Philomath. I believe treaties are something that are reserved between nations, and not a nation and a town of 5,000 people.
I did not think about that. And thank you for that information. I was very much unaware. So then in that case, if we were to keep this, would we want to change? I would suggest that we would change it to agreements of some kind, but
yeah, if you're talking about like why Philomath High School gets to use the warrior mascot, that's an agreement between, and codified by state law, that the tribes have with the school district.
Okay, cool. Thank you for that. I was very much.
Chaz, then Van.
That was exactly what I was going to mention. And so thank you for that. And then the other thing is, I know that we don't have any existing, I don't believe we have any existing agreements with the tribe, the Grand Ronde tribe, but it does, I know that the Grand Ronde tribe considers Philomath to be on its traditional lands as much as the Siletz. And so I have a little bit of concern about mentioning one tribe without mentioning any, and I'd prefer to mention no tribes, like by name, and just refer to tribal nations, just so that we don't exclude any tribes that identify Philomath as being their traditional lands. And Yeah, that's all.
All right, thank
Yeah,
you,
thank
Van.
you. I forgot that.
Oh, well, thank you, Jessica, because when I was reading what Chris had to say, I could see his point. And I don't know, I didn't read clear through all of what he was saying there, and I appreciate what you said, Jessica, about intent. But when I look at C2, it does say evaluate current status of tribal agreements. So if it is an agreement that the tribe has with the school district, that's suggesting that we would evaluate them. So, and I kind of get that. I certainly got Chris's point about not, interfering with their agreements, but then on the other side, how could we work together with the school district collectively? I mean, that all makes sense. So maybe just even changing a few words, which I don't have in front of me, might make that work. Or and maybe even not, or even take number 2 out. I don't know.
I see Zena, then Jessica.
I guess I was coming from the perspective of like, it would just be about opening up conversations and, hi Atticus, having these genuine moments with people, not as like I don't know, trying to more focus on the collective instead of, instead of exact policies. Okay, I'll take you out. That's what I was thinking.
Jessica.
So instead of, for number 2, we could strike it, or we could strike the first part of it and just say work with tribes to determine how to enhance our relationships with each other. But I don't know what people prefer. And then to clarify, Mayor, for number 1, C1, would you have it read regarding the tribe's agreement with the Philomath School District? Or
Yeah, that's what I've been sitting here thinking about, like, when May called.
just
That's what I was trying to think. I'm thinking of trying to figure out how we can combine maybe C1 and C2 into one. Possibly combine all 3 of those bullet points into just one item C. But I think it would behoove us possibly not to, well, I'm not afraid of mentioning the agreement between the school district, but I also don't know that it's completely necessary. Maybe we could talk about just researching indigenous history in the area of Philomath and consider how to work with tribes to determine how to enhance our relationships.
Okay. Yeah, no, that sounds great. I can tell you that when I wrote this was back in October 2020, and very much that was the only agreement I knew of and still know of. So I had used it as an example in case it wasn't clear. But anyway, so you had said, well, first of all, does everyone like that, or?
I like
I see
that.
nods, waves. I hear
Okay.
yes from Rose.
Could you please repeat what you just said then, Mayor?
Yeah, so this is off the cuff, but if we left item C, so I'm just going to read through this as if maybe it's all one bullet point, item C, and then we can just go from there. Build and strengthen the city's relationship with tribal nations who were forcibly removed from this land, and research indigenous history in this place so that we can work with tribes to better to determine how to enhance our relationships.
Okay, so what I have is build and strengthen the city's build and strengthen the city's relationship with tribal nations who were forcibly removed from this land now called Philomath, and research indigenous history in this place to determine how to better enhance our relationships. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, that's pretty close.
Okay.
I did remove the word agreement. I don't know how you feel about that, Council Andrade, but I'm just highlighting that I did remove that, even though that was one thing that you I feel like that's a significant thing that I suggested removing. So I don't know.
That's totally fine on my end if everyone else is cool with that too.
Yeah.
I believe instead of who in the first phrase or the first sentence should be which.
Yeah.
Teresa would have
Sorry,
nailed that.
What was it that you just said?
Instead of who in the first line, it should be which.
Okay. I always get confused about that because I think of tribal nations as being people.
Yeah.
And so just not really sure. So it is which?
Yeah, because it's referring to the nation, which is a entity, not a person.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Behoove it was with like members of the tribal nation, members of tribal nations who, but this is that tribal nations which. And
Okay, any further comments, edits?
And this, I just have one quick comment. This, just to confirm, this is a working document. These are going to be guidelines that we can use, we can come back to on a regular basis, modify if we choose to, or clarify.
Yes, that is my understanding for sure. Van, then Jessica.
On that second page, probably it would be useful to, because the general public would have opportunity to see this. Where in number 1, it says establish an inclusivity event calendar or program of EDIJ. I don't know what that means, so I'm sure others, maybe it should be written out as far as the words.
In that case, should I do what was suggested before from Rose about diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility?
I mean, that would
Sounds great.
Yeah. And spell it out.
Right.
To the mayor's point of verifying that it's a living document to review and stuff, is that something to, like, I don't know, have like an intro or preamble or something that specifically states that? Or wait, or do we have that in here? I've been through so many iterations of this, I can't remember anymore. Yeah, it looks like we don't have anything saying that it is a living document. We will come back to it at any time we choose. Is that something worth putting in writing here? Or does it matter?
Do you want to intentionally write in here that you have a goal of reviewing this once a year or once every 2 years? Or do we not want to do that? And that would get at the same content if we wanted to put a time frame on it. But But I'm open to suggestion.
If I could respond, I would like to see this document be something that, and I guess this was maybe my assumption leading in, but that this is a document that we will refer to on a fairly regular basis, and that it's something that city council can refer to if like they need to put a longer term action item on our list, or if we identify something within the committee as we want to put this down on paper for accountability's sake, this is a long-term goal of ours or whatever. I would like to see this document adjusted much more often than once a year. And I don't know that putting a specific timetable on it will behoove us either in a positive or negative direction in this case. Chris?
Yeah, Councilor Andrade, the best thing might just be when this goes to the city council, just put that in the agenda item summary that this is going to be renewed on an ongoing basis by the Inclusivity Committee, and any recommended changes will come back to the city council for review and approval. So I don't know you need to put it in the document. You can just do that at the time it's approved. I'm assuming we'll approve this by way of resolution, so we could even put that in the resolution, that type of language. So
Okay, that is good to know. Thank you.
I just want to do a quick time check. Maeve, we've got another group coming in to use this room at 7 o'clock, and so we've got about probably 10 minutes to hit our last agenda item topic.
Okay. In that case, then, unless there is anything seriously outstanding about the goals and objectives, I'd like to move on to the Shipley Homestead historical marker ceremony.
Maybe can we just check that we've got consensus? So you kind of asked for that, but just so I can get it in the minutes, so we maybe just ask if there's consensus to approve as discussed, and maybe give Councilor Andrade direction to, or whoever. I keep putting up to Andrade, but to go ahead and move these forward to the city council for consideration.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Chris. Do we have consensus on our committee goals and objectives?
Yes.
I see a lot of yeses.
Yes.
Any no's? Excellent. Moving forward, Jessica, you can take those to, I almost said the bank, but it's not, the city council.
It is kind of.
I will be sure to send out the final edits, and if there's anything I miss, please let me, everyone, whoever know before the council meeting, so that we can make the appropriate motions at that time.
Awesome. All right. Last item of business is the Shipley Homestead historical marker ceremony. Jessica, I can't open the meeting packet for some reason. Are you able to take this as well?
Yeah, I'm sorry
Thank
it wasn't
you.
working out. So basically, a while back, we had someone who come to to our committee at one point, and definitely to city council, requesting that a historical marker be put in place to commemorate the Shipley family, Reuben and Mary Jane Shipley, for their contributions to the Mount Union Cemetery and creating an inclusive cemetery. And the people who put this together raised enough money. We supported it, and now there's going to be a ceremony for that marker, and that will be July 23rd at 11 a.m. at Newton Creek Park. All are welcome to attend. Eric Neiman reached out. He's liaisoning, I suppose, between everyone and getting this ceremony, helping to put it together. And he was wondering, they were all wondering if we would like to participate in some way with someone representing the committee and giving some sort of remarks about this. And so we need to decide whether we would like to participate as a committee, and if so, who will represent the committee and what it is that they will say. And so in the packet, there's a draft proposed comments that we came.
Uh-oh, looks like we may have hopefully temporarily lost Jessica.
It sounded like she was hoping that we would identify a person that might want to participate or not. I will already be there for giving statements before at the beginning, so it should be somebody else.
Well, they did list Jessica on the draft agenda, I guess you would call it, for the ceremony. I guess I'm assuming she would do it.
She might want a person of color.
There she's coming back. You're unfrozen.
Yep.
We can't hear you now.
We can see you, Jessica, but you are muted.
Thank you. Yeah, thank goodness I had my phone at the ready. My laptop's acting up. Anyway, the last thing I heard was myself saying, asking whether people had thoughts specifically on this.
So Mayor Jones just stated that you're listed on the draft on this last page already. And so I think if you were available and willing to do it, then I guess we'd hear that from you. And if you didn't want to do that, or you want to open up somebody else, then we'll kind of leave it to you.
Yeah, I was surprised that he had already put my name on there. I am more than happy to, but I also don't want to take that from someone if they really, really, really want to do it. I recognize that even though I am one of the co-chairs, I am a city councilor co-chair and have lots of opportunities to I want other people to be able to have the opportunity to lead and participate if they want to. I recognize the power dynamic more or less. So if anyone really wants to do it, please let me know.
So Maeve or Rose or Zena, does anybody want to volunteer today, or do you want to just reach out to, it sounds like there's not a lot of time here. I think they're wanting to get programs and stuff put together. So Jessica, you want to just have them reach out to you maybe offline so there's not pressure to pick something right now. They got to look at schedules and stuff. So maybe someone could just reach out to you in the next 2 or 3 days, and then if you don't hear from anybody, then you can just go ahead and do it.
That sounds great.
Okay. So we'll just kind of leave it that way. Maeve or Zena or Rose. Sorry, I don't have your visual, Rose, so I had to look at your name. Or anybody else on the committee for that matter. If anybody else is interested in doing that, just reach out to Councilor Andrade here in the next couple of days. And if she doesn't hear from anybody, then she'll go ahead and just respond to Eric Neiman that she's willing to do that on behalf of the committee.
I think that sounds great to me.
Okay. I mean, there's no pressure in the meeting to have to commit to something. So.
And I'll just throw out there that if the timeline doesn't work out to identify an individual, you could put Inclusivity Committee representative in the program.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Oh, do you have something else?
Well, I was just going to ask what people thought about the proposed comments. If anyone said anything before, I didn't hear it because of my laptop.
We haven't had discussion about that.
Personally, Chris's edits looked great to me. It all looked pretty smooth and straightforward.
Rose, and
I would
then
agree.
Van.
I would agree with Shaz. I really like it. And I think Jessica would be an excellent representative. I definitely plan on attending, but go Jess.
Van?
Obviously, we weren't per se involved with it necessarily, but I assume they're putting the marker there at the park because it's near the highway for, passerbys to look at. But is there going to be anything up at the Mount Union at all? Or, it would be nice if there was, but it's not, I'm not paying for it. I don't know who's paying for it. These groups are, but I assume there was nothing planned for up there, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Chris would know more, but looks like we have people coming in now.
Rose, do you have something quick?
Real quick, it might be a little bit off topic, so I apologize for that. But Chris, was the Park Advisory Board going to be involved in this at all as part of the community appreciation? Seems like Dale should say something.
Yes, I've brought that up and he will be, yes.
Fantastic.
So then in our last couple seconds here, do we have any volunteers to co-chair next meeting?
I would be willing to.
Awesome. Thank you, Van.
Yep.
Thank you. We'll be in touch, Van.
Okay.
All right, then. If there is nothing further, I would like to call this meeting adjourned.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Maeve. Have a good night, everyone.
Perfect timing. How are you all tonight?
Oh, pretty good.
All right.
You've got all set up fancy for us.
Yes.